Hi, Mickey Quinn here with Retail Level Up. In today's Moment with Mickey, we're going to be talking about the one thing that is consistent and constant in all business. Doesn't matter small or big, doesn't matter what type of industry or what type of business you're in. The one thing that is constant, which kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but the one thing that is constant is change. Now, there are tons of examples of businesses that have misstepped, faltered, even failed completely because they failed to change. A couple of examples that come to mind. Kodak. Eastman Kodak was started over 120 years ago. They had the corner on the market of personal cameras and film photography. They had like 90% of the business. Now, back in the 1970s, their own research and development department came up with the very first prototype of a digital camera and digital photography. Yet they sat on this for over 20 years and did nothing with it. Why? Because they were afraid that this change would impact the lifeblood and the huge portion of their sales and revenue, which was film photography. They failed to make a change. Another example, traditional bookstores. Booksellers across the country, there were thousands of locations, names that you would all recognize, like Barnes & Noble, Borders, Walden Books. Now, they were all aware of this little funky startup that was named after a river, of all things, in South America. And they all knew that this funky little startup had big intentions and plans to change the way people bought books and how they read books. And this little startup planned to be the biggest seller of books ever. Everybody knew this startup's intentions. And yet, most of the bookstores across the country, the national chains, failed to take any action to make any changes to their business processes. And because of that, the Border Group, Walden Books, B. Dalton, they no longer even exist today. And when Barnes & Noble finally decided that they needed to do something to change their business model, they had already lost hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and market share to that funky little startup, Amazon. Now, why was it that the business leaders of these big names, these big businesses, chose not to make any changes to their business models, even though they knew that this threat was coming at them? It was a direct competitor. Why didn't they make any changes? Well, it's because sales were great. Their sales and their profit were phenomenal. And the employees were happy, the customers were happy. Why rock the boat? Well, why indeed? Well, because any successful business knows that in order to maintain that success, you have to innovate. And innovation means not just paying attention to what's happening in your community that you do business in, or what's happening in your industry in which you do business in. No, it actually means you have to pay attention to what's happening in other industries. What are the new things that are happening? Because your customers are impacted by those other industries and how they're innovating and changing. And your customers' wants, needs, and expectations of your business will be impacted by those innovations. So it's important to stay abreast of what's happening in the world, in your community, but also in other areas of business that can impact yours. And it's critical to innovate. So learn more about tips like this by following Retail Level Up on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. And check out our podcast. It's available on Apple, it's available on Spotify, and a host of other places wherever you enjoy getting your podcasts. We also want you to visit retaillevelup.com and sign up to get our email subscription. you'll get Monday motivation and Top Tip Tuesday, because we all could use a little extra motivation right now, and we can certainly use some helpful tips. It's time to level up.